Hi guys, welcome to RaceRoom and the updated Tatuus. I thought that seeing as this is quite a significant update to this car and quite a departure from how it behaved previously, that a driver's briefing video was quite justified. So I'll start off just by talking a little bit about the car, what we've updated, and then I'll drive it and talk about a few things that you need to be aware of when you drive the car, and a few things to watch out for, and a few little hints and tips and things like that as we go along. So I'll just start off with what do we do to update the car. Well, basically everything was started from scratch. I've actually been lucky enough in the real world to drive and race a few cars that are similar to this. Not exactly one of these F4s, but although I did actually race at one point in a series in the UK called the Formula 4 Championship, but I'm so old that was actually before this F4 series was conceived, before the thing existed. So judge from that what you will. Okay, so let's just start by going through a few specs of the car. So the car itself is 570 kilos with the driver on board. It's got steel brakes. It's got a sequential gearbox. The engine itself, we've actually decided to make a bit of a change. Before, the car had a VAG engine, I think, a Volkswagen Group engine, which was okay, but we just sort of scoured the web and looked at a few videos on YouTube and noticed how much more meaty the some of the other powered cars were. So we actually decided to swap across to the Abarth engine for the sake of this, which is actually what the car most commonly comes with. So that engine is a little 1.4 litre 4-cylinder turbo, which is actually the very same engine that, well, I've got in my road car, which is a Fiat Bravo, but it comes in the Fiat 500 and all those cars, so it obviously can be quite powerful. In this instance, it's not particularly highly boosted. It gives us 160 horsepower at peak at 5,500 revs, and it gives us 245 newton meters of torque thereabouts at about 4,000 revs, and it's got a nice fat torque band in the middle of it, which is really useful for racing, to have a nice big fat power band rather than it being peaky. It revs out to 6,200 revs, and what else can I tell you? I think that's pretty much about it, really, with regards to the specs of the car. Now, I'll tell you what, there's another thing. There's the downforce of this. It does actually have a fairly reasonable amount of downforce. If you take this as like the next step in the single-seater ladder after our Formula Junior, then the downforce is, well, the Formula Junior actually makes lift. This makes actual positive downforce, quite a bit of it. It's giving us, what does this work out at now? That comes to 140 kilos at downforce at 200 kph, just looking at some figures in front of me and doing a quick conversion, so it's thereabouts there. In terms of suspension setup, it's actually very stiffly sprung. Those of you that like to have numbers like that thrown at them, the front ride frequency of this car is 6.67 Hertz and the rear is 6 Hertz. If that means anything to anyone, then so be it. And if it doesn't, okay, I'm sorry if it's confusing, but if you want to know more about what that means, then you can just ask ahead. And then another interesting little fact is that the roll gradient of this car, that's how many degrees the body actually rolls when you go around a corner, which is a quantifiable number that we can use to compare cars with, is 0.143 degrees of body roll per cornering G. Okay, I'll let that digest just for a minute, and then I will go for a drive. So I've been letting the car sit in the pit lane, so the tyres are going to be lovely and cold for me right about now. Oh, I've turned it off. Let's try again. Oh yes, 25 degrees C tyre temperature all around. That's going to be lovely. Okay, so off for a drive. And we've got a few AI on track this time as well. Okay, so it's a nice, snappy, fast gear change in this car. Oh, a few more AI behind me. I'll let those guys go by. I picked this track because I find it's a really nice circuit. I've not got the mirror turned on, so I'll have to just cheat and look behind me like that. It's a really nice circuit for this sort of car, especially the very first section. You'll see when I get going and the tyres get warmed up. It's got a nice smooth gear change. Okay, so what have you got to watch out for in this? Well, probably the closest cars to this in game in terms of behaviour are, right now it's somewhere at a midpoint between the FR90 and the FR Junior. So it's light and nimble like the FR Junior, but it's also a little bit more on edge like the 90. I think it's a fairly easy car to actually overdrive, so you can't really push the pace with this car because it will swap ends on you if you drive too hard. Now you can see that I've actually got a pretty decent amount of grip already, even though those tyre temperatures are pretty cold. Now the reason is it uses a very soft tyre compound because it's quite a light car, and a soft tyre compound works very well at quite low tyre temperatures. It doesn't have to get really hot to give all its grip. So about 60 degrees is the absolute peak, but if you're anywhere between 50 and 70, that's a pretty happy ground for the tyres in this. Okay, now they're starting to really come on for me. Now, just make sure when you're driving this circuit that you stay well away from those big red domes in the corners, because they're surefire suspension breakers. Okay, so don't try to brake too late because that'll happen. I was going to try to illustrate the point that you really need to commit to doing most of your braking in a straight line with this car at high speed. You can jump on the brakes very, very hard whilst the downforce is there, but as soon as the downforce starts to peel off, you will have problems, and I obviously didn't do it properly that time. So when you've got trail braking like that, it can get a little bit tricky. Now, because this car has got quite a lot of torque, you don't actually need to drop down the gearbox as much as you might think. Like, a lot of people might be tempted to use second there, but we've got enough torque to actually give us wheel spin, so we don't need to go down into second. Third is quite good. In fact, that's a general point that I'm going to bring up right now, that I do notice that it's not just a sim racer in general thing. It's generally people driving on a circuit like to do it. They spend too much time changing gear. Basically, if you've got a lot of torque and you've got a good strong engine, let the engine do the work. There's no need for you to be shifting up and down the gears. It ends up being a distraction from the actual driving. Which costs time. You know, if you can actually stay in a gear, the car's going to be more settled, and you can concentrate on actually carrying speed to the apex or out of the corner, rather than having to do some little micro corrections for a car that's nervous because you've been changing gear in the turns. Okay, right, let's get going with these AI. You can see it's a little bit lively out of the slow turns, but it's not a car that's really going to bite you unless you're really starting to overdrive. It'll just be playful, and you'll generally find that the more you let that tail wander out, the slower it is. So it really does reward you being nice and smooth with it. Now this is a really good bit of the circuit for this car. So this stuff here is like almost flat or nearly flat, so it's really rewarding. And then you've got this left just here. A little bit of a tiptoey in there, but that's okay. And you can see, even though I probably could have gone for third there, I stayed in fourth, and it's still accelerated pretty damn well. A little bit of a lock-up, but it's nothing to worry too much about. Ooh. Can't do the cutback that time. Now, of course, there's an aero car as well. When you're following another car, you will lose a bit of downforce at the front end. So just be mindful of that when racing, especially in the braking zones. And it's not a car, of course, that likes those really big curves. I already mentioned those domes, but stay away from the very big ones because it will get upset. Okay, now we're lining up for the pass. This guy's getting towed from the car in front. It's very fast down here. No, too good on the brakes for me this time. Around the outside, can we do it? No. Okay, so there we have it. That's pretty much really all there is to say for now about this Tatuus F4. So just to summarise, don't overdrive it. Basically, it's quite easy to overdrive. It's not a GT3 car that'll sort of it's got a lot of weight and a lot of inertia, and will sort of let you get away with a bit. This is being so light, it will not reward you in terms of lap times if you drive too hard. But enjoy it. I'll sign out for now. Goodbye.